Well, hello and welcome to another LinkedIn Live Q&A interview where I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. Alan Lowdon. And today we're going to talk about international innovation and deal making. So how are you doing, Alan?
Very good, Paul. Yourself?
Yes, very, very good. So I posted something a little bit earlier when I said when it comes to innovation, developing new products or services, expanding nationally or internationally, I can't think of anyone better qualified or more experienced than you. So,
well, very kind of you. I'm sure there are others out there, but it's doing my little bit.
Yeah, well, just when you look at your CV, your track record, and your work experience, and also the what you're doing now, what you've done in the past, and all the voluntary roles that you've got as well, it's incredible what you've done and what you continue to do. So, good place to start is probably to talk a little bit about your background and what you've done so far and what you're doing right now.
Yeah. Just I won't bore the pants off you with it, but I'll give you a potted history. Yeah, I was very fortunate at the outset to be sponsored first degree to PhD by the NEI group, which became, as I'm sure you're aware, Rolls-Royce Industrial Power. And really that sort of set the scene for me. I was to be an energy and utilities sort of individual, covering the whole spectrum of R&D through to new venture creation, IP, commercialization, everything which went with being in that sector and the requirements, and driven by, in many ways, by privatization of the sector, electricity sector, gas sector, water sectors. I've been in all of those, and it sort of stimulated an interest in that whole commercialization piece, which I mentioned just before. So that included British Gas, included I was director of technology and research and technology at the Northumbrian Water Lyonnaise des Eaux Technology and Innovation Centre for 7 years. That was a great formative period in my life, and that sort of got me thinking about getting out there in the international market and doing something a little bit more entrepreneurial. I mean, we had a great time at Lyonnaise. We set up a research and technology business, and that went around the world in support of the French parent company's international operations. But it also triggered something in me. And I was doing my MBA at Durham at the time, and I just wanted to get out there and test myself for an external market to see how I'd cope versus what I'd done on an internal market. So that set the scene for me, really getting interested in the new venture creation and startup world. So that triggered a period of running university startup, New Water, spin out from Newcastle University. And I then went into more mainstream technology investment in Aberdeen. And I ultimately came home to be Director of Technology and Innovation at the National Renewable Energy Centre, NAREC, at Blyth, which is blazing a fantastic trail now as the offshore renewable energy catapult. And it's fantastic to see the region blossoming from those very early beginnings in the early 2000s where NAREC was created from One Northeast. So there's lots of stuff which is going on. There's lots of connectivity there. And I ultimately decided that having had a period I did a turnaround job at McDonald, and I was also fortunate to work for Sinclair Knight Mertz in its wind energy consultancy practice. But I decided over a period of time that I was wanting to develop a portfolio career and do things that I was really interested in, helping people out, bringing new ideas to market, and firmly occupying that startup and growth phase of businesses, both in the region, nationally, but increasingly internationally, which now sees me heavily involved in the United States offshore wind scene, which is a true delight, and it's a culmination of a lifelong ambition to do something of significance in Massachusetts, but we can come on to that later on. Right. So yeah, that's a potted history. It's been a bit of a meandering journey, but there's a common thread which runs through all of this, as I'm an applied mathematician, and I specialized in fluid dynamics very early on in my career, and that's taken me into all of those sectors. Wow. So if it flows through a pipe or over a structure, I was your man, but I probably forgot more than I ever knew.
Right, amazing. That's interesting because I mean, I've forgotten all of this now. But when I went to university, I studied geography and I studied fluvial dynamics.
Oh yeah, yes.
So at one point, I knew quite a lot about the movement of water.
We can discuss that over a pint sometime.
I've forgotten it all now, but all right. So obviously you talk a lot, I mean, amazing. Like if anyone goes on your LinkedIn profile and sees the range of organizations that you work with, but it is, like you say, it's consistent with there's a theme, there are themes, common themes running through that. But like offshore and renewable and wind and energy, that's kind of what you're really interested in at the moment? Is that your real passion? Is that?
Yeah, the passion. I mean, it's a consistent passion. I've been in offshore wind for I think under 15 years now. Obviously, very small at the beginning because the industry was small, but increasingly it's getting larger and it's getting larger globally. So huge opportunities. And I was fortunate enough to be asked by the government to help them set up the offshore renewable energy catapult in 2012, which was a real delight for me, having worked at NAREC. And to see what that's done in the Northeast and globally now is a true delight. It's a fantastic facility, the world's largest test and demonstration facility there. The offshore demonstrator at Blythe I was involved in bringing to life with my team at the time, and the other execs on the board at NAREC. But we went about stuff in a fairly high risk manner at the time because we didn't know the industry was going to become what it's become. But fortunately, we got the support of the then outgoing Labour government, and we were able to construct those world-leading test facilities, which you can see as you drive up the northeast coast now. Great. But yes, it's that type of relationship, and those networks have echoed around the world, and it's been a real boon for me to be able to draw upon that experience and draw upon those contacts and experiences to best effect for others around the globe.
Yeah, amazing. So you like that, right? Obviously, it's like you say, it's the world's biggest, and it is world renowned. People do recognize it from countries all around the world. Look to Blythe in the northeast as this for this expertise and this center of excellence, right? But how do you bring something like that to life? Because like you say, it's just kind of taken for granted probably now. Oh well, it's there. It's probably how do you get it started?
Well, like any asset that you build, you've got to populate it with work. And so the big challenges at the beginning was that we were probably ahead of the market. So we had this big shiny thing, and we needed to fill it with equipment. We needed to kit it out, which we ultimately got the money to do that. And there was a fantastic support from a number of different directions around the UK to do that. But a lot of people were still skeptical about the industry and when it was going to come to life. There was, back in 2009, 10, we were talking about 40,000 jobs in offshore wind over the next 4 to 5 years. Well, that didn't materialize, but it's certainly starting to materialize now. So I think the whole thing is about building confidence, is getting started in maybe a non-big test and demonstration asset way is what we did. We were technical advisors to the Crown Estate. We were building credibility, and we were networking. And I think that's a key theme about everything that you do in your career is to network. And building the relationships with the United States was a big thing because we had a technology and a personnel transfer program with the United States, which helped us learn from what they were doing there and helped us influence their construction of their equivalent to the big blade test facility, which is at Blythe here. So it's all about partnering and just building credibility, building profile. And then ultimately, the big corporates who have the big assets, designing these big blades, designing these big gearbox structures and drivetrains, ultimately have to test them somewhere. They have to be certified, and the world isn't awash with these types of facilities. So ultimately, the cream rises to the top, and the cream is certainly in the northeast.
Right, amazing. Well, on that, you talked about networking, so it's not enough to just sit here waiting for people to come here, or aggressively waiting for the phone to ring, as my friend Brad Burton talks about. You got to get out there, don't you? So, and that's something you've been doing. You've been going out. You and your colleagues and everyone you've worked with over the years have gone out to where these other experts are and these other organizations and other companies are to fly the flag and talk about the resources and facilities that you've got. So that's crucial, isn't it? You have to do that. You have to go out there. You can't just sit back.
Without a doubt, you have to tread the boards, as I say, and it can be a long lead time before you get a return, and that's something you have to accept in any business development function. You have to make those relationships. You have to build those relationships. You have to build the bonds of trust with people who are going to buy or procure your services in whatever way. And that takes time. In human relationships, there's no substitute for having your networks in country, in markets, in sector, and that time and time again, those networks are so important in terms of fast tracking ideas to market, or fast tracking feedback on something which is going on, and start influencing the way in which decisions are taken for the betterment of the of the region, or for the nation, or for the global community. Essential.
Yeah, and I guess like not having obviously you want to get things going quickly, but not having a short-term view of it. Like you've got to think longer term. That like you say, like the idea was to create all these jobs within 4 to 5 years, but it's taken longer. It's probably taken 10, 15 years, would you say, to get? But the time is now. Really the momentum has built, and the market's kind of caught up. The world is caught up. Society's caught up. And you've already got something there that's already got proven track record. You're not starting from scratch. You started. Was it? I'll get this wrong, but was it the Chinese saying the best time to plant a tree? Was 20 years ago or something like that. And the second time is today.
And you have to take your hats off to the visionaries, and a big shout out to One Northeast for creating that centre of excellence and the other centres of excellence at the time. Some were more successful than others, but certainly what we have in the Northeast now and the wider Northeast community, because the spin-off benefits of what's going on and what's gone on at the offshore catapult at Blythe is extensive. And you're in the digital community. The move to digitization of the energy sector is so opportunistic. And for people to be able to morph their products and services from what you would call mainstream digital environment into something which is going to be wholly applicable to the offshore renewables space is relatively straightforward now. And you're seeing it all of the time. Some fantastic Northeast businesses existing on the back of data and interpretive analysis.
Yeah, that's when it gets really good, isn't it? When you have these different subsectors crossing over, that's when some real innovation happens, and you can apply. It shouldn't just be, okay, we are only offshore and renewable, and we can't speak to anyone in digital. When you get that crossover, that's when you get some real breakthrough occurring.
Asset management is, in any sector, I mean, not just offshore, any infrastructure sector, increasing the degree of smartness on those assets is so important in terms of the optimized use of resources, be it materials in the assets to construct them, or be the way in which they're maintained once they're up and running.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about the link with the US? And
there's always like a personal driver in these things, isn't there? When you boil it down to basics, something's happened in your life as a kid or whatever that causes you to think or behave in a particular way. So when I was going through this journey of being sponsored first degree to PhD, about 18 months into my PhD, I got a call from, I didn't get a call, I got a letter addressed to me from MIT, asking if I'd be interested in doing a PhD there. And of course, I was partway through a PhD and I wasn't going to renege on that deal, so I turned them down. So I always had this desire to do something of significance in Massachusetts, for that reason, I suppose. So every time I'm in Boston or whatever, I'm always to be found wandering around MIT or Harvard or something like that, just as a bit of exercise, obviously, but there's a bit of fun as well. So the United States link was fundamentally forged in my Aberdeen days, when I was part of an outfit called ITI Energy, which was early stage technology investment house. But ultimately, when I carried that type of relationship into NAREC, we were able to exploit that relationship, as I mentioned, with the National Renewable Energy Lab in the United States, and that started germinating these relationships. The fact that their test facility was in United States, in Boston, sort of ticked or checked the Massachusetts box, and we were able to extend the relationship with Massachusetts in a very positive way. And so thereafter, the seeds were sown, the relationships with NREL were sown, and I did a chunk of work down on the Humber about 3 or 4 years ago on the Greenport Growth Program, which is an economic development program around offshore wind. And we struck a load of great relationships with the different states on the eastern seaboard. And ultimately, those relationships have led to a tap on the shoulder about 2 years ago from an outfit called Bristol Community College, which is the leading community college in the United States for workforce training in a whole raft of sectors, but in particular in offshore wind. So we were able to come together. They wanted some assistance from me to help them establish the National Offshore Wind Institute, which is a workforce development, innovation, and entrepreneurship unit, which is going to train the next generation of technicians, industry professionals for the offshore renewable energy sector. And they wanted the UK sort of stamp on that in terms of experience, how to do these things. And so that's what's led me to spending a significant chunk of my time, obviously not at the moment because we're not able to travel, but once the travel ban is lifted, I'll be back transcending the pond and doing my stuff across there to help them get this what will be a globally leading facility underway. So yeah, it's the Massachusetts box has been checked.
Amazing. So, I mean, you said there about they wanted the UK sort of stamp or UK seal. So why is that important to them? Because I think, I don't know, maybe there's an assumption that the US is well, it's obviously bigger and better. So do they really need the UK? But obviously they do. Do they value the expertise that the UK can bring?
Yeah, it's because of the nascent nature of the offshore wind sector in the United States. It's just getting started. Okay. The change of administration with Biden coming into the seat has made a big difference in the last few months. So it's going to be, the industry is being fast tracked now. However, before that, there was the realization, and some of the stuff I was involved in around about 2013-14 with the National Renewable Energy Lab, was to choose its demonstration sites in the States, how we could demonstrate offshore wind technology to the big sort of load center communities in Massachusetts, New England, New York, the Carolinas. And they've always had this desire to bring this industry to life. And it's started to be taken seriously now, and the momentum is building fantastically well. There's another wave of investment which is going to come in, and another wave of interest which is going to come in, which will firmly place the United States ahead of the game, and that's in floating offshore wind, where the oil and gas technologies which they have, the experience, the workforce that they have, can be almost readily deployed to these floating structures very akin to oil and gas platforms off the continental shelf of the US in very deep waters.
Okay.
So that's where they're going with this. The oil and gas majors are coming into the States now to back the industry. So Shell's there, BP's there, Chevron have just shown their colors as well, with their intention to get into the sector. So things are moving, and as well as I do that when the States decides to do something, it does it.
Yeah.
And it's going to do this, and it's going to do it big time. And it wouldn't surprise me within the next 10 years that the United States is the global leader in floating offshore wind.
Right. Wow. That's exciting, isn't it? Because you say, I think there's understandably, when you got big oil and gas companies, you know, that are like reluctant to maybe embrace the renewable energy or offshore wind. But if they're getting behind it now, then it's definitely going to happen, isn't it? You know, and yeah, I mean, I like you said before, I studied geography at university. I remember that, so that's like 95 to 98. So it's people were trying to get this going back then. You know, like it takes that long but it's, excuse the pun, the idea of a big tanker, it takes a while to turn it around, but once it does, then there's a lot of momentum behind it, and the fact that you're involved in there from the outset is it's very exciting for you and everyone else that you're working with over here in the UK as well.
Well, I think the point, you asked the point about why the UK. It's because the UK has got a track record in fixed bottom wind, which is putting it on the seabed. And that's relevant today in the United States. So the schemes which I mentioned from Maine, which is a floating structure, but the others from New England area down to the Carolinas are all fixed bottom, with the exception of Dominion, which is going to have potentially floating structure as well. But fundamentally, the density of wind farms which are being permitted now in the States are fixed bottom. So the European, and not just the UK, but the European experience is extremely relevant. So part of the things we've been doing is this work in the States at the moment is to down select that's an Americanism, choose a partner to help us build out this training center, this workforce development center, and that partner is Maersk Training, and they're based out of Denmark. They're headquartered in Denmark, but we're using their UK team to do it. So again, UK competence, UK expertise in the creation of these assets is extremely important, and also the experiences, the scars of being pioneers in an industry are still extremely relevant, and that anecdotal evidence is hugely valuable to the US market.
Yeah, I love that, because it's like when you need something like this, which is of global significance, you do need people to come together across the globe. You need that global collaboration and partnerships in place. I think sometimes, like some industries and definitely some businesses, it's a bit too, it's pushed as too much like countries versus country, or region versus region, or city versus region. But it's that does go on, obviously, like business, every business wants to be successful, wants to be number one. But for something like this, you can't operate in isolation. You need to find the experts and bring people together. So I guess what I'm getting at is, like, who's leading that then? Because sometimes I think you've got the business leaders deciding whether that happens, but you've got the political leaders as well, and sometimes the politicians or the public sector can exacerbate that regionalism or localism and that rivalry between towns and cities or regions or even countries. So you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, just back to the States for a second before I revert back to the UK. The big message which is going in from the UK to the US is not every state is going to have a wind turbine blade factory. Not every state is going to have a gearbox factory. Not every state is going to be building wind turbine towers. They will be distributed optimally along the eastern seaboard, and the suppliers and the OEMs will decide. But don't compete artificially, collaborate, because the collaboration, and certainly in New England, the collaboration is starting to happen, and starting to happen very well. So that's a message which came in from the UK based upon the findings of the I suppose competition on the rivers along the our eastern seaboard, and there's enough in this for everyone. I mean, I've just stepped down a fantastic 8 years as a harbour commissioner, non-exec director at the Port of Blyth, and the transformation of that port in that period of time around offshore energy, in its widest sense, has been unbelievable. And that's because there's been a desire to create these both technical and economic clusters of organizations that can work together and feed off each other. So that's a very strong model to be able to take around the world. And when you do it and you do it well, it can be so powerful. So that's the message that we're trying to get out there in terms of, don't compete regionally, cluster regionally. And I know we didn't get the Freeport. Obviously, Teesside did very well, and there will be huge benefits to the wider Northeast as a result of that. And so did Humber, and again, that will work for the wider Northeast. But we didn't get it on the Weir, Tyne, and Blythe, and that was a bit of a shame. But it doesn't stop us doing what we're doing and doing extremely well now. So I think this message about clustering, this message about the economic development agencies and the regions around the UK, and in particular the Northern Powerhouse region, which is relevant to offshore wind for us, is that collaboration is far better than competition, because there's not good. I mean, we fortunately in the northeastern seaboard, we've got a blade factory in Siemens and the Humber, and we're going to have one down the road on Teesside from where I'm sitting at the moment. And the spin-off benefits of those two investments will be enormous. But we're not going to have one in every sub-conurbation, from Edinburgh through to Lowestoft. It ain't going to happen. So the same message about collaboration and finding your niche in those areas as well, because instrumentation, control systems, advanced IT have all got a role to play in this industry. I know we're fundamentally focusing on offshore wind here, but this goes to any big asset class that you're constructing. So all of these platform technologies have got a role to play. So we are big on the digital side, as you well know, and that's finding its route into market in the offshore wind space is a huge opportunity that we can leverage to the full. And that's because we are good at certain things, and bringing those competencies through into this bigger sector on a regional basis is key.
Yeah. Do you think I mean, this is just my opinion, I think when you've worked nationally and particularly internationally, you think more along those lines than if you've only ever worked locally? Because I sometimes people who all they've ever done is worked locally, particularly for a local authority, and it's not that they're not smart people or anything, but because they're so focused on their local area, they don't necessarily think about the benefits of working on a wider basis across with different regions or different across the UK or different countries. Do you think that maybe that is because of your global perspective? Because you've
I'm sure it is. And the other thing which I've found in my travels around the globe over the last however many years is that fundamentally the same challenges exist in the various conurbations that I've had involvement with. So we have the public sector sort of challenges in trying to encourage risk taking. It's the same in the UK as it is in the United States. There's a burden of administration which goes with the public sector, which is probably 2 or 3 times greater in the United States than it is in the UK. But once you get through it, you are free to go in the United States. And so you can do a lot more once you're through that bureaucratic hurdle in the US, in my experience, compared with that equivalent sort of stage gate in the UK. So I think it's just understanding the constraints and the psyche and the cultures of these different sectors that you have to interact with to bring an industry to life, or to bring a company to the fore, or to invest in a company. It's all to do with the local content, but understanding that so that you can operate globally as well.
Yeah, great points. Okay, I want to ask you a bit here about the importance of leveraging big brands when you're stepping out into the startup world. So like the entrepreneurship, being an internal entrepreneur, innovating from within, stimulating entrepreneurship outside. Yeah,
it's a very good question. It's it is an interesting thing, this, because the question in business schools is often asked, can you teach entrepreneurship? I think you can teach the academic sort of constructs of entrepreneurship. But
Mm-hmm.
what is an entrepreneur? Well, I think it's fundamentally somebody that's willing to take calculated risk.
Mm-hmm.
So, in an internal environment, you often find, I mean, you've experienced Procter & Gamble and all of that. These big brands allow you to do a certain amount of activity within the context of R&D or increasingly innovation departments.
Mm-hmm.
But fundamentally, they don't want too much risk to be created as a result of that. So what it allows you to do is to find yourself, is to do stuff that we talked about when I was at Shell, which was personal stretch. That's a great phrase. I love it.
Okay.
One of the big takeaways from working for Shell is, personal stretch. So you stretch yourself by putting yourself in new experiences, and you stretch yourself by experiencing new challenges and forcing yourself to step out of the comfort zone. The trick is not to take yourself beyond your elastic limit, of course, and then being able to go back into some shape. So entrepreneurship in the big brands that I've been associated with, which have sort of germinated this in me, were fundamentally some in British Gas, where we were in the British Gas Research and Technology division, and we were allowed to do certain things and experiment, and then look for money to commercialize internally those experimental findings. But the big one was when I joined from British Gas. I went into Lyonnaise des Eaux through its Northeast Water UK subsidiary, and we were there to kickstart a international centre of excellence in pipes, effectively underground assets, to support the international concession contracts that the French parent company was going for, and it was fantastic. So I was the head of R&D when I went in, and ultimately when I left, we had a limited company within the Lyonnaise UK Northumbrian Water Group, because we've gone through a merger as well, and our remit was to support global expansion. So again, back to this visionary stuff and global mindset. This was all seeded at that stage. But during the course of that, we effectively created a business. So I created a business in Lyonnaise des Eaux' image, and that became a 25-person technical services business with a big R&D program. But that sowed the seed in me for doing that externally. So the big brand on the CV was Suez Lyonnaise, the world's largest multi-utility at the time. So that was important in the next phase, which was stepping out into a micro business, a university startup, because you had to have the credibility. So big brands on the CV give you credibility. They give you internal experience in bringing products, services, ideas to market in a safe environment, to ultimately try them in a less safe environment. So the big brand will also, for somebody looking at investing in your services, be it a consulting service or be it a new design or a new product that you're bringing to market, will take a look at you and think, well, okay, well, Shell or British Gas or Rolls-Royce, they decided to give this person a chance. And so if they were good enough for Rolls-Royce or Shell, then I'll give them a go as well. And it's as simple as that. Human psyche is what's behind this. So big brands on CVs in certain sectors are more important than others, obviously. But for me, in my career, it's been really very, very important. And I left a university startup to go into Shell to help it set up a new business unit, and I knew fine well I wouldn't last because of the culture that I experienced in a university startup. I was free to operate, free to influence, and then immediately you go into an entrepreneurship environment, and the control mechanisms start to descend. So ultimately, we did the job, and then I moved into the portfolio existence, which I mentioned at the beginning. So big brands are important in terms of credibility building, and also learning what you don't want to do as well.
Yeah, I get that, because I think I was an entrepreneur when I worked for Sage. So I've worked for them twice. My first job after uni was working for them, like just on tech support. Then I left. Then I learned how to be entrepreneurial by hanging out with entrepreneurs and doing jobs where I was giving business advice and support and networking and going to events and reading books and blah, blah, blah. So I was in roles where I was working with startups and small businesses, and I got the bug from that, and stuff in my spare time, voluntary, helping to host events and networking and all that sort of stuff, and being part of the digital tech startup scene in the Northeast. But then I went back into Sage because they wanted someone with that expertise and network and insights. But I did find it difficult because the people at the top said we want to be more innovative, entrepreneurial, I want to shake the tree, be disruptive, all that sort of stuff. People at kind of the lower level, bottom level, alongside me, particularly the techie developers, were like, great, let's go, let's make this happen. But the middle management, I found it, they didn't really like it. And at first it was like on an almost weekly basis being told that's not the way we do things around here. I was like, exactly, that's why we're doing it. And so even though it was working and the people at the top were loving it and the sales were going up and everything was working, it was causing problems internally. Because, and it's only really with hindsight and books I've read and stuff, it's because middle management, generally, their job is to keep things as they are, the status quo, and to keep a lid on things. So it's not easy, as even if people want to be innovative and they want to develop new products and services, it's challenging.
Yeah, and it can be the reason. Well, fundamentally, it's usually the reason why people quit jobs is to find that freedom to operate.
Yeah.
And I think I'm a big encourager of finding your freedom to operate parameters, because you want to be true to yourself. And going to work every day it's a significant chunk of our lives. Enjoying what you do and being true to yourself, finding yourself as well. Back to the personal stretch point. You stretch yourself personally by doing a whole raft of different things, and your work is only one of them. But then it's such an important bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did love working for Sage. I learned a lot and really exciting. I didn't realize how competitive I was until I was in that environment, because you want to win. You want to be number one, and you want us to win in the market and all that sort of stuff. But I left. Obviously, I went to work for Tech North, and I loved that role as community engagement and partnerships manager for the whole of the north of England. And getting back to spending time with the entrepreneurs and the innovators and trying to grow the regional economy, tech and digital. And then I started my own business 5 years ago. And I've continued to work with Sage at different times. I've worked with them through the events, and I've done a bit of consultancy work with them. And so the relationship's still there, because even though I don't necessarily want to work for them internally, they trust me to offer something that they can't do themselves. And I recognize the need for, you need big partners, to support things that you're doing as well. So I think on that as well, a lot of startups I've met over the years, amazing at what they do, but what they really need is a big customer. They need a big partner to support what they do.
Yeah.
And if you've got, like you have, and I have at a lesser extent, but you definitely you've got that track record and that trust, they're more likely to listen to you.
I think, you touched on a very important point for me. There's no organization that I've worked for that I didn't enjoy working for. But ultimately, you leave an organization because of something which is, it's an internal driver to do something, or you've come across a roadblock that you don't like, or there's too much bureaucracy. But fundamentally, the organizations which I have worked for in my career have been fantastic. Fantastic to me. I've taken a little bit from each of those organizations to make the mongrel that you see in front of you now. And it's all about that. It's about pulling out the best bits and making yourself the whole. But the big thing is the point that you made. It's working with organizations versus working for organizations. And I would work with every organization I've worked for at the drop of a hat again. And some of them I do. And it's because of what you said, because you have the respect of the organization, and I have the respect of the organization in the opposite direction. And or the organization in the opposite direction. So, it's all of the softer things are really what drive you in these instances.
Yeah.
And drive you to do things which you probably, going back 10 years, you think, God, I never saw myself doing that. You're doing it, and you're doing it for different things that come to the fore in your life, and in the different stimuli that you get when you're interacting with people in your work or your leisure time as well.
Yeah, totally. Well, it all adds up, doesn't it? Yeah, and definitely every organization I've worked for has been amazing. Like I've learned so much from them, and still have a lot of high regard for them and try to support them in any way I can. So then, just want to talk a bit about like why, because in more recent years you've wanted to get a bit more involved in sort of startup communities or regional development and giving back.
I do. One of the things I haven't mentioned so far, which is it's a love of mine. I'm part of a what's called the Dealmaking network for the Department for International Trade's Global Entrepreneur Program.
Yeah, that's when I first. I think that's when I first met you through that.
Yeah, I gave a talk at one of your gigs. Was it St James's or was it at the core? I can't remember now. I think it was at the core, wasn't it? Yeah. So the Global Entrepreneur Program basically looks to leverage the networks of 15 or 16 we call deal makers in the network, and we have our own areas of specialization. So I tend to focus on clean tech, a little bit of health tech as well, but clean tech fundamentally. And we look to identify high growth potential, IP-rich businesses, early stage, and get them to set up their global HQ in the UK. So the government procures a bit of your time each month to do this, but fundamentally we leverage our contacts to best effect. And we work with these entrepreneurs, these founders, to get them to see the light and get them to set their HQ in the UK. So what I do is I spend quite a bit of time. Well, I did spend quite a bit of time in the United States, as I've mentioned, Singapore, India, and also certain areas of Europe where there is a big demand for companies to set up and come to the UK. So I've been doing it about 4.5 years. I've been associated with the program for about 10. But I've been a formal deal maker for 4.5 years, Northeast deal maker, and I've had 28 companies into the UK in that time. And around about, I think we've had not quite half, but not far off half are based in the Northeast. So you'll see some of them doing the rounds, Equiwatt, key energy systems. There's some Technovator. You'll hear a lot about Technovator over the next few years. It's set up at NetPark, and various other ones as well. But I'm integrating them into the Northeast innovation ecosystem, which is really important to do, because we do have a lot of national centers of excellence in the region, which is a massive attractor to these companies who don't know the region at all well until you start articulating it. And having big, shiny things to attract them, the National Innovation Centre for Data being one of them. Obviously, we've mentioned the Catapult. We've got the Aging Centre, National Aging Centre in the Helix. All of these things, all these building blocks. I've said this to the Northeast Lab. All of these building blocks are so important as attractors to these startup companies. So do that, and I put the businesses where they're best suited to be. So if the business isn't right for the Northeast, I won't tout the Northeast. So I've had businesses in East Anglia, London, the Southwest, Scotland. But yes, it's great fun. You meet some fantastic people, and the drives and determinations of some of these founders they never cease to amaze me. They're so driven, and the things they put on the line to succeed and that's great, as you mentioned earlier, to rub shoulders and to work with these founders and early stage entrepreneurs is such a delight.
Yeah, it's infectious, I think, isn't it? When you come across real thoroughbred entrepreneurs and the energy and enthusiasm they have for what they're doing, and particularly when the people you're coming across and working with, it's real, like groundbreaking, genuinely innovative, potentially world-changing technologies that they're working on. So how easy is it to persuade them to come to the UK?
It's not difficult at all. In many ways, it depends where they're coming from and what ties they may have signed up to retaining in terms of, say, local grant finance. That can be a bit of a blocker at times.
Mm-hmm.
But what they're seeing is, especially during the last 15 months of what we've been through, they've seen the UK. And I know it hasn't been perfect, but in the eyes of the world, we've done some fantastic stuff in terms of supporting our startups,
mm-hmm.
or early stage businesses. I'm an assessor for Innovate UK's various programs, and we had a program which was put together almost over one weekend last year, which was the COVID Impact program, which it doled out some, I don't know, I can't remember now, but hundreds of businesses were supported at £50,000 a time.
Mm-hmm.
And that had a COVID-related project, but they were absolutely superb in terms of keeping these businesses afloat.
Mm-hmm.
And the world sees this, and the world sees the activities and the impact that this has had. And they think, well, okay, we're going to have some degree of not just protection, but some degree of incubation and support when we come to the UK. So, why did they come? They come for the quality of the universities, because most of these companies that are coming in want to continue their R&D phase, and they want to tap into the talent, they want to tap into the research base, they want to tap into the catapults. They want to do all of the next generation of IP development that you would expect them to want to do, but they want to do it from a high quality base, and they see that as the UK. The tax regime in terms of R&D tax credits, IP patent box, all make it very attractive to them in terms of cash flowing that early stage of development. The existence of investment funds and investors, be it business angel, private equity, venture capital, or crowdfunding, that's increasingly important to the fraternity I deal with, all make the UK a very attractive proposition. And as does the ease of setting up a business and also closing it if it doesn't work out. The compared with mainland Europe, where it takes a long time. So I was speaking to somebody who was looking to move from Norway to the UK, and it took them 6 months to set their Norwegian business up. It takes you 48 hours here. A big difference. And that's a statement. So all of these things, and also the regional incentives are very important. So London doesn't have any regional incentives of any description in terms of grant finance, but the stuff that the LEPs are doing is I mean, they may not realize the importance of this, but 25 grand here or 10 grand there can make a huge difference in terms of the early stage liquidity of a startup in a region outside of London.
Yeah, there's a lot goes into it then, but I think that's having your role is to be aware of all these things as well, so you can package it all up in a way that's maybe not neatly packaged up. It's like
diverse. Yeah, you're right.
And and things like the shiny buildings and the centers of excellence and the university, the reputation that obviously that is kind of, in a way, you can see it, you can feel it, you can touch it. But there's a lot of intangible stuff, or maybe a bit more hidden away stuff that you need, that on the ground expertise and network and knowledge that you've got to. Because you're not just getting them here and then leaving them alone.
No, it only starts when they get here, really. I mean, we have a very rigorous process to go through before they are allowed on this program.
Okay.
It's a facilitation program as much as anything, but we do vet the business very strongly. We vet the drives and determinations and motivations of the founders, and they go through an internal review process to make sure that they are fit for purpose, fit for the program. And if they're not fit for the GEP, the Global Entrepreneur Program, then they may well be fit for some other kind of inward investment play from another part of government. So we don't abandon them. They just need to fit the criteria for GEP admission.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So can people apply for that still now? Is it still open for application?
It's open all the time. It's we draw the curtain down towards the end of March, where we counter what we've done, as it were, and then we fling the doors open again in April for new applications. But it's a very personal thing. So in clean tech, if somebody expresses an interest, say to HQ in London about a clean tech inward investment play, then I get to hear about it, and I'll take a view on it. I'll do a call like this, and off and running we'll go. And sometimes, you can see that it's far too early stage. The business hasn't even got going in its home market, never mind coming to the UK for global expansion. So you just work with them and just keep them in abeyance and bring them to the fore when they've matured a bit. So it's all about relationships, but we're the first port of call. And then if we give the thumbs up, then the formal process starts.
Right. Brilliant. Okay. So we're talking about what you're working on right now and what's coming up next for you.
Yeah, it's well, clearly, I mean, the Global Entrepreneur Program stuff chugs away merrily in the background. I've got about 10 deals to put into the government system, so that's exciting. And they span clean tech, cricket tech as well, which is I've got some sporting stuff, which is great.
All right, okay, excellent.
Yeah, cricket coaching tech, that's a new one. Sport tech, and also my US life is it's going on. I do some work to assist the offshore renewable catapult. But I'm also a professor in practice at Durham University's Energy Institute, where I chair the advisory board. And that's part of my give back that we mentioned earlier. So that's exciting. I love doing that, and I'm looking to help out on the offshore wind side there more and more. But I've also got a project which is potentially going to hit the streets over the next few months, which is related to an investment fund. Can't really say too much about it, but it'll be clean tech focused, and it'll be at the micro business end, the startup end of the spectrum, where I think there's a huge gap in terms of providing that early stage liquidity for businesses to get going. So that's work in progress. That's looking at some potential first sort of investee companies at the moment. So watch this space on that one. But no, it's a fantastic time. I had a great time as well, I have to say, as I was chair of the Northeast LEP Innovation Board for 3 years. And that was great, and great to see the great work going on there in the innovation space. And Roy Sandbach, my predecessor, set the bar very high, and fortunately we've got a great innovation ecosystem that's starting to bear fruit in our core competencies.
Amazing. Well, but sometimes I think I'm busy and I do a lot, but then I think I need to try harder after Tony.
There is a degree of convergence in all of this, though. I mean, if you're operating in parallel on each and everything I do, then it would be extremely difficult to do. But there is it's like a big Venn diagram, and I try and operate in the sweet spot in the middle as much as I can. But it's a pleasure. I mean, you do things because you enjoy them, and that's really what the portfolio existence does. It allows you to pick and choose and enjoy. It's been a great journey so far, and I've got no intention of getting off the bus yet.
No, you can't. You've got too much still to give, and things are really they have been exciting for years, but things are really, really, really getting exciting now globally, particularly with the offshore energy. And on the clean tech fund, I know you say you can't go into too much detail, but is that going to be a national thing or a regional thing? Or
I'll be playing regionally first.
Okay.
I think this is, you've got to be very focused on these things, and you've got to again, it's back to leveraging your networks, knowing investable businesses that you've worked with or you've seen evolve or spin out or whatever over the years. So my radar's been going for a while now as to if we had the liquidity, who would we invest in? So obviously we're dealing with the investors. So the people behind the scenes, and they want to invest in the clean tech space because the funds that they have on account are getting nothing at the moment, and they want do some greater good. So the ESG agenda is really important, and there's a lots of fantastic companies that could do with this type of support regionally, and who have got huge growth potential, and not just locally, nationally, but principally globally in the clean tech space. So that's the driver, and initially it'll be be 2 or 3 investments, but ultimately, 2 or 3 years down the line, hopefully we'll have a nice portfolio at that end of the spectrum. That's an end of the spectrum that many shy away from, Paul.
Yeah, it's really important. I mean, I've seen, you need someone to just go in first, don't you? Like, it's like someone to give them a chance and put a little bit of money in from the beginning. Even it's different. But when I worked for Tech North, right, we small amounts of money. It wasn't an investment thing, but we gave out £120,000 worth of grants. Like, and some of it was 500 quid, £1,000, £2,000, £5,000, £10,000, right? But we were coming across amazing things all across the Northeast, and lots of people saying it was a great idea, a great product or service, but no one was willing to put a bit of money in. So what we did, we put a bit of money in, and the seal of approval, having the Tech North logo seal of approval, often enough to unlock lots of other funding, because people are like, oh, well, if Tech North thinks it's a good idea, then we'll come in as well. But it needs somebody to make that first move. So I think it's so important to get someone with, or an organization or individuals with credibility in that space to do that, to back them at the very early stage. Otherwise it never happens.
No, and the big driver for this, because when you're seeing the volume of startups and clean tech focused organizations that I am, then that some, if they don't get reasonable liquidity reasonably early in their existence, will vanish. That IP will just either sit on a shelf, or it'll be acquired for a song from somebody, and it will just not be maximized. We're trying to avoid that. But you got to take your hats off to the funds that are in the region. North Star, I've had lots of people with North Star over the years, got a fantastic relationship, and I think they're great. But they need complementary funds around them as well to co-invest. So this type of ecosystem there's enough in this for a lot of organizations to do well out of and support. So I think it's the evolution of what we're seeing in the Northeast to have these types of facilities available to that end of the spectrum. Yeah,
brilliant. Very exciting. Things as we're coming out of the lockdown, things are going to get even more exciting for everyone, I think. So can't come soon enough. If anyone wants to know about any of this that you talked about, just happy for them to get in touch with you.
I mean, it's the beauty of this, and the fantastic work that you do and others in the region do in terms of the Innovation Super Network, all of the people who link groups of people together. This is one little node in that, and I'm just one little player in a huge system. So I'm there, always open to talk to if people want a little bit of advice or mentor or whatever, or be signposted in the direction of something more specific. Then that's what it's all about. It's helping people out.
Yeah, it's really important, because like you say, you're a small node, but you're having a big impact. I think that's the thing. Like, individual people can still have a big impact if they think and operate the way you do. So keep doing what you're doing, Alan, and I really appreciate
the closing remark. Back to the NEI Parsons days, which I'm so privileged to have been in that organization. Somebody took me, a guy called Terry Wilkinson, took me under his wing to effectively show me the world of steam turbines and the mathematical content of steam turbines. And I never forgot that. And that was so important to me at that stage in my development. Then I am hell-bent on having somebody in the future years think, well, Alan Lowdon took me under his wing and helped me get on the journey. If you do that a number of times, then you've succeeded in your career.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. Love it. Excellent. Right. Thank you very much, Alan. I know I can see there's a few questions being posted on LinkedIn, so we'll reply to them. And if you want to share any links to anything underneath that as well, we'll post them on there. And
Okay.
we'll get this spread out forum-wise, as many people get to see this as possible. Okay.
Okay. So
Thanks a lot.
thank you very much. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.